You know, those family gatherings where everything's fine until someone brings up that one topic and then we're all in an all out fight. Today, I'm going to give you some tips to help you navigate those awkward family discussions, especially before they really blow up and ruin the family event. All right, let's jump in. The first tip is really practice active listening. So, active listening, a lot of us don't really do that, especially when we're in a discussion. Most of the times, we're just focused on when it's our turn to respond. We might even have like responses that we're making up in our head, so we lose track of what the other person is saying. So, active listening is really when you're giving your full undivided attention and you're really trying to just soak in. You're really being this listener. So, there's some common traits with active listening. You're going to give your full attention, like I said. So, really be engaged in what the other person is hearing. Let go of your own agenda or needing to respond. Your whole point is just to really try to understand. You're going to use nonverbal, so like nodding your head, responding, really like looking at the person in the face. You're going to reflect back, right? So a part of active listening is not just hearing, but like really making sure that you've integrated and understand what the person is saying. So I hear you saying you're really frustrated with this situation. Is that right? But you can really make sure and check in because maybe they might say, no, I'm not frustrated. I'm pissed off, right? That's a little bit different. Also ask clarifying questions, particularly like open-ended questions, especially if you're not sure about something. So can you tell me a little bit more about this situation? I don't think I'm sure about X, Y, and Z. So again, you're asking more open-ended questions to really try to understand. So for example, let's say you're at the family dinner and your sibling starts to express frustration about their work. Instead of just jumping in to try to give solutions or fix it or whatnot, really just try to practice active listening. And first, just make sure that your sibling gets that you understand them, right? And that you're really trying to hear them. So, man, I hear you're frustrated because your boss keeps adding more and more to your plate. Is that right? Am I getting that? Or is there something else that's really stressing you out about this work situation? Right? And really just allow your sibling to just express what they're feeling. And again, your job is just to really hear and then reflect back like, oh man, you're frustrated because of X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying you can't give advice, but I always find it helpful to ask first, are you looking for advice on this or you're just looking to really vent about this really hard situation, right? Because a lot of times, especially in gatherings, maybe we're just looking to be heard and understood. We're not looking for advice. Sometimes we want very concrete advice and that's fine, but I always find it's really helpful to make sure that the person is understood and validated before just jumping in and cutting them off with like, this is what you should do. To also practice this when a situation kind of breaks out all of a sudden, or maybe you're involved, you can still practice the active listening. So try to remove yourself from the equation. So really acknowledging, man, I hear that you're really frustrated by this thing that I did. I hear that you didn't expect that, right? So instead of trying to defend yourself, or again, really, if you want to be like, man, that's not right, that's not what happened. Again, I really just want you to first practice listening, right? Try to just understand where the other person is coming from. The second tip is about practicing empathy and validation. Empathy is really the ability to understand and really kind of do this perspective taking. Try to understand, like put yourself in their shoes. And validation is really about you understanding and saying that your emotional experience is valid. Now, you might not fully agree with why they're feeling what they're feeling, but emotions aren't based on fact. They're not right or wrong. They're just an emotional experience that someone has. And that's really important for you to keep in mind when you're validating someone's feeling. You're validating that they feel this way. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're saying why they feel that or kind of the reason is right or wrong. You're kind of removing that from the equation. You're just saying, I get you feel really angry. And that's a valid feeling, right? You're allowed to feel angry about this. So how you would really practice this is first really kind of acknowledging the feeling you're hearing and I hear you feel really sad about this. Really staying out of judgment. So not like you shouldn't feel sad about this. There's no reason why. It's just more like, oh, I get that you feel really sad about this. Remove the judgment. And really kind of this perspective taking is tapping into maybe an instance where you felt sad about something. Maybe it's completely unrelated, but can you tap into your own feeling and acknowledge like, yeah, when I feel really sad at times, I feel really alone. Or when I feel really sad, man, I know it's really hard to be with that feeling. Is that what it's like for you? Again, you're just really trying to make sure that you can understand their emotional experience and validating like, yeah, I can see that you feel really sad about that. I get that. Now, this might be much easier practicing empathy and validation when you're not involved. So like, let's say, your mom comes to me and says, man, I'm really pissed off at your father. He did X, Y, and Z. So you can really just stay out of it and just practice like, oh, I hear you're really angry about what dad did. Yeah, like I get that. I've been really frustrated by X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever the case is that you're just like empathizing and validating. You're not also like feeling the fire. And that's the other thing, like really getting them more pissed off or invalidating their experience. Like, yeah, you shouldn't feel that way. Why are you even making a big deal about this? Now, when this is related to you, again, this might be really hard, but I really want you to still practice that empathy, right? So try as much as possible to remove your experience or feelings from the situation. Now, I'm not saying your feelings aren't valid or your perspective isn't valid, But for this whole piece of like managing conflict and being able to navigate it, I want you to really focus on what you can control and not have unrealistic expectations about what other people can do. So in this instance, if you want to really kind of reduce the difficulty or reduce the conflict or the tension, I want you to really acknowledge, like, oh, yeah, I see that you can't understand why someone would vote a certain way. It sounds like your perspective is X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever the case is. Obviously, I'm using politics because I know that's a hot button thing, but I just want you to really empathize and validate before you defend or protect yourself, or maybe get stuck in this back and forth. And that's another tip that we're going to talk about. It's like, do you even want to engage in a conversation about something? But I'll leave that for another tip. So this next tip is kind of a three-parter. So you can either choose to redirect a conversation, take a break at any point during a conversation, or completely end a conversation. So clearly the first piece is acknowledging or deciding, do you even want to go into this conversation or have this conversation? And that's a very active choice that you get to make. And if you choose not to, then the first piece is really, you can just redirect the conversation. So it's like, man, I know we're starting to get into this politics territory, and I know that typically in the past it hasn't gone well. So let's really focus on family traditions or our favorite family traditions. I'll go first, right? So you're really redirecting the conversation, steering it clear before it even starts. And that's really important. If you know that you or in your whole family, there's certain conversations that really end up going a certain way, and you just want to even prevent that or prevent your part in it, you can try to steer the conversation early on. If you choose to go into the conversation, you can also then choose to take breaks. So what that also looks like, it's noticing maybe the signs of escalation either for yourself or for other people, noticing maybe like emotionally if you're starting to, like, the temperature is rising for you, and if you need to just take a moment and you can acknowledge, like, wow, I'm noticing I'm getting a little heated here, so I'm just going to take a breather, and you can just step away, whether that's going to the bathroom, putting water in your face, going for a walk if that's what you need to do, right? Again, obviously you can't control what the other person or other people are going to do, but you can control what you're going to do and your role in it, or what you need to be okay. And then you can just flat out end the conversation as well. Like, taking a break means that you can also come back to it, but you can also just end the conversation and say, yeah, I can see that this conversation is really getting us stuck here, and I want us to really enjoy our time together. So let's just move on. Let's just agree to disagree about this. And that's what it is. So again, you get to really decide how you want to handle that. What specific strategies have you tried to calm down or reduce the tension in heated family discussions? Comment below so we can all learn from each other. Maybe it's something that I didn't mention here. Tip is all about staying grounded. So this is all about being able to handle your emotions, like stay in your window of tolerance to be able to cope with what's showing up. So part of this is also noticing like signs that you're starting to escalate when your emotions are feeling too much, and then you're either going to shut down or overreact or whatever that looks like for you. So really recognize what those signs are, and you can start to implement these grounding techniques way before you even get there, but definitely for sure once you're there, or really going back to taking a break at that point. But if you are going to implement some of this could be like really practicing anything that's going to help you stay grounded. It could be like deep breathing. So taking a moment to just like focus on your breathing. And maybe this is when you've taken a break and you stepped away and you're in the bathroom, like kind of, okay, I'm just going to focus on my breathing here. Just take a moment, like really notice what this feels like. If you even stepped away, maybe that means like pop on a quick mindfulness exercise to help you stay grounded again. Maybe if you're still in the thick of this conversation with your family or present, or maybe multiple people, just also noticing like, okay, I'm also going to take a moment to just really focus on like physical sensations here. So noticing what my pants feel like on my legs, or what the sensation of the sweater is on my arm, or hey, I'm just going to take a moment to really focus my full attention on my feet on my ground, whatever that looks like for you. And also just take a moment to kind of like scan your environment and really use your senses to like notice like, okay, that painting behind my dad, what are the colors in that painting? Really focus on it for a moment. And so this will involve like kind of removing yourself, like not doing the active listening so much, but really focusing on your emotional stability. Now, obviously it really depends on, because if you're like directly involved in this back and forth, you have to be really clear, like, okay, can you practice this mindfulness, or do you need a moment to practice this mindfulness? Maybe it's like you have an object that really helps you, right? So like, even if it's like a stress ball, or maybe you don't have a stress ball with you, but like, you have an object in your pocket that you can touch that's just for texture to help you come back to the moment. Again, if you know that your family dynamic can be a little complicated, be a little strategic beforehand. The next tip is about seeking common ground or focusing on common goals. So really trying to highlight like, what are the things about this disagreement or discussion that maybe you guys can get on the same page, or what are the underlying shared values? So let's say a discussion comes up about what we want to do for New Year's Eve, right? And everyone has differing opinions, and maybe there's travel plans involved. So you guys are going to travel together, and then all of a sudden this turns into a heated conversation. You can also really acknowledge like what's the shared value or interest here. It's that we all want to spend time together as a family. We want to connect. That's why we're ultimately even trying to figure this out. So really keeping that top of mind. You can also ask open-ended questions again to really understand what everyone's goals are. So like what's really important to you, or what do you want to prioritize? Maybe one person wants to just have more like nights in. Maybe another person really wants to prioritize novel experience or foodie experience. So really acknowledging like what's important about the specific situation that still keeps this connection or family time top of mind. You can also highlight positive instances in the past where you were able to manage things or figure it out. So acknowledging like, man, last year when we had this discussion, we really were able to compromise or get on the same page. What did we do then? Or highlighting things in the past that really worked. Man, last family vacation game night was something that we all really enjoyed. Let's make sure we really incorporate that again. Again, this is also kind of really acknowledging that when you're having a discussion with someone, especially depending on the goal of the discussion, that there might be some commonalities. Now, let's say you guys just have really just disagreements about something like parenting. You might not want to get into a discussion of who's right or who's wrong or whatnot. You might still need to set certain limits, but you can still highlight positive aspects. Like you can acknowledge like, I see that it's really important for you to be a good grandma to little Johnny. And it's also really important to me to be a good mom. I know we might not really agree or always agree on what that looks like, but I know we both have little Johnny's best interests at hand. This next tip is about separating people from the problem. So this is all about kind of creating some distance, not internalizing the conflict, and really focusing on how you guys can come up to a solution to the problem if this is a discussion that has a solution. Like I know some discussions there really isn't a solution. It's more like a differences of opinion and what the goal is in that discussion. So that's also really important when you have a discussion like that. It's like, what is the goal here? Is it for us to understand each other? It's clearly not for us to just villainize each other. But if the goal is like, okay, there's a concrete solution to this, then let's try to figure out how we can get to that. You can really start to use objective language instead of you want this, I want this is the best way, or yours is the worst way, and really not villainizing each other. It's really using objective language. So really saying the problem is we need to figure out what we're going to do with gift giving this year. Shift the focus to this is both really important to us. We both have really good ideas and we both want the best for the family. And then really kind of thinking about like, what's the solution? So focus on solution, not necessarily just the problem, focusing on how we can get on the same page, how we can collaborate on this. So thinking about like, okay, is there a way for us to compromise? Do you have any areas of flexibility? Do I have any areas of flexibility? Or maybe it's like, okay, for the kids, we'll do white elephant, but for the adults, we'll do Secret Santa, or vice versa. So thinking about, are there areas of flexibility if this is a very solution-focused problem? If you're looking for ways to strengthen your family relationships this holiday season, then watch this next video where I'm going to give you concrete practical skills that are going to help you not just handle conflict, but actually strengthen these family relationships. And like I always say, I encourage you to continue nurturing your mind, body, and soul, whatever that looks like for you guys. Thanks.